Welcome to our gentle class today. And our theme this week is flow or water. And water covers roughly 70% of the planet, and it makes up roughly 70% of our bodies. I find this fascinating. And we talked at some point about the earth, and maybe not in this session, but I have talked about it before. And in the sound healing, we were looking a lot at this last week, 2 weeks ago. The idea that our bodies and everything actually on the planet has a resonant frequency, and our bodies have the same frequency as the earth. And we're made up of roughly the same percentage of water as the earth. And, really what we are is just mini versions of the earth. And the earth is like a living entity, and obviously we are as well. And so when we think about water, when I think about water, I think about two aspects of water. I think about the flow of water, right? The water is moving and it has a flow and a rhythm and a movement to it, like waves coming in at the ocean. But the other aspect of water that is really dear to me is that stillness, right? I think it was last week I sent out a picture of the moon that I took over Lake Kawawaimog in Algonquin Park, just outside Algonquin Park, where I was leading retreats this year. And just that absolutely glassy, calm, still water, whether the moon is shining on it or the sunrise or whatever, it's just so grounding to me. So this idea that there's flow and there's movement in water, but there's also this really calm feeling of peace associated with water. We're going to focus on the flow aspect a little bit more, but obviously we're always looking for that kind of inner calm and peace when we're practicing yoga. But we're going to be really working with flow today, and the idea, and a lot working with the joints. So when seasons change and it gets colder as it is now, what often happens is the joints feel creakier. And the way to lubricate a joint, to get water, to get lubrication to the joint, is to move the joint. If you have arthritis, sometimes it's painful to move the joints, but we do still need to move them. And you have to gauge for yourself whether that's a pain that you can relax in and tolerate, or whether you want to do something different or skip an exercise. But there's very few times in yoga we really want to move, even if it feels painful. And arthritis is unfortunately one of those, because let's face it, some days you can't move at all without pain, and we have to keep moving. And so this idea is we get the lubrication to the joints, they move more smoothly, and ideally through that process we feel more ease, more flow in our bodies, and less pain and stiffness. So we're going to start lying down. You can get yourself comfortable, and I'll meet you on the mat. I'm sharing my mat today, at this moment. So the joys of Hex and yoga. It's going to come down onto your mat. You can have your knees bent. That allows your lower back to be a little bit flatter, but if you're more comfortable to begin with the straight leg, that's fine too. We're going to bring the hands onto the belly. And nothing more complicated than simply noticing your breath as it is. So there's no need to change anything. Watch your inhale, watch your exhale, notice that rhythm. And you might even imagine that your breath is like the waves coming in and out from the shore. And just like waves, when the breath reaches its apex, there's a little pause. And when we come to the valley or the end of the exhale, there's a little pause. As you tune into your breath, see if you can be aware of and notice those natural pauses, sort of this moment of suspension in the breath after the inhale, after the exhale. Notice if your mind starts to wander off, and when you notice that it's gone somewhere else, gently nudge it back to the breath. This idea of simply watching and noticing the breath as it is, not changing it, not forcing it, or straining it in any way. And then we're going to add a little bit of movement here. And it's a very subtle, gentle movement. You can start really subtle and then make it a little bit more obvious as you go. So what we'll do is as you exhale, press your feet down until you feel your lower back flattened against the mat. Your tailbone will lift a little bit. And then as you inhale, your tailbone can lower. Your back will arch maybe a little bit. There's some space perhaps between your lower back and the ground. And then you'll exhale, press the feet, flatten the lower back. It's just a little bit of a rocking motion. Inhaling, we'll arch. Exhaling, flattening. Starting to get a little bit of subtle movement through the spine. You might notice that you're really just focused on moving the hips here, but the spine moves all the way to the crown of the head. So as you rock, the hips tilt, the head moves as well. So notice how everything is connected. Do movement in one area of the spine. You can feel it throughout. Now just let that go, come back to normal breath, just letting the movement subside. Tune back into your breath for a moment. And again, coming back to those little pauses, noticing that natural suspension at the beginning and the end of each breath. We're going to take the arms and reach them up towards the ceiling. So they're straight up over your shoulders, palms start facing each other. And let's lift the fingers, reaching up toward the ceiling, shoulder blades separate and lift a little. Big breath in and then exhale, let the shoulders sink down to the ground. We'll do that a few times. Lifting, breathing into that space between the shoulder blades. Exhale, sinking the shoulders down. Follow your own breath rhythm here. And leaving the arms in the air, let the shoulders rest on the ground. Circle the wrists around. Circle one direction and then go the other way. You can take your hands over your chest, interlace your fingers, and then turn your palms up toward the ceiling and press the palms away, stretching the hands a little bit. And then releasing, give the hands a shake. And then take your hands and bring them to opposite elbows. So you're making a little square over your chest. And we'll slowly roll the head and take the elbows to the same direction. Just two little ways to begin with, going one way and then the other way. Side to side, go at your own pace. You can exhale as you go to the side, inhale as you come to center. Right. And then when you come to center, let's release the arms. We'll bring the knees up in towards the body. And we'll move the knees forward and back. So starting with straight arms, take a breath in. Exhale and draw the knees in towards your body. And then inhale to move them away. Again, you're following your own breath rhythm, or if that doesn't feel right for you, you're just moving and breathing at a comfortable rate. And then if it feels good for you, you can try circling the knees. If it feels better to keep doing what you were doing, stay with that. If you're circling, do a few circles the other way as well. And come back to the center. Give a little squeeze in. And then releasing the feet to the floor. And take the arms out to the sides, just a little away from the body. Feet can be a little bit apart here, and that's going to bring a little more movement into the hips, less into the spine as we twist. We're taking the knees to one side. You can turn the head the other way if that feels good for your neck. And then back to center, knees and nose, and then releasing the other way. Inhaling center, exhaling, alternating sides. Going again at your own pace, always at your own pace. Eventually making your way back to the center. And once again, we'll bring the knees into the chest, this time folding the knees and gently rocking side to side, massaging those big muscles that support the spine. And again, if there's another movement here that feels better to you, one of the movements we already did, feel free to choose that instead. Let's come back to the center. We can release the feet to the floor and bring the arms down alongside the body. So start with lifting the arms straight up, bringing them towards the floor behind you. You may not come to the floor. You can also bend and open your arms a little bit if that's more comfortable, and then back down to your sides. So inhaling as you lift, and exhaling as you lower. Again, your breath may be a different pace than mine. Follow what comes naturally to you. And the next time your arms are coming down, bring one knee in toward your chest. Hold that knee for a few breaths. And then we'll work with the joints of the knee and ankle. So you can either hold behind your knee, or you can let the hands rest on the floor or on your body as you bend and straighten the knee. So working with the knee joint and the muscles that support the knee. So the quadriceps have to engage and shorten the hamstrings and lengthen to straighten the leg, and then the opposite when we bend the knee. And those muscles support the knee joint. You can leave the leg in the air. It certainly doesn't have to be straight. It can, if that's comfortable for you, but slightly bent is just fine as you circle your ankle around. Finding that flow and ease in the joints as we gently circle and invite fluid, the synovial fluid, to lubricate the joint. And then press your heel toward the ceiling so you feel some stretch in the back of the calf, maybe into the thigh as well. And then point your toes toward the ceiling. Be gentle with this one. Sometimes the feet tend to cramp if you point too strong. So just be cautious if that happens. You'll just bend the other way. And then point and flex a few times here. Okay. Relax your ankle now, give the leg a gentle shake. And we'll bring that knee in towards the chest. And then, if you like, you can straighten the other leg, see how that feels. If not, then keep it bent. Press into the heel that's on the ground, point up with the toes. Take a couple of breaths here, relaxing that knee into your chest, not forcing or pulling it. And so, ideally, you could let go, and the muscles of your core would hold the leg there. If you let go and the leg pops away, you know that you're forcing that position. And then you can try making some movements with that hip. So either with both hands on the knee or just the one hand on that side. You can circle. Now moving into that hip joint, a big challenging joint, the ball and socket joints of the hip, which has a lot of surface area on it. So trying to get into that full joint as much as feels comfortably. You can also circle the other way. And then let's add a little side to side movement. So you can start with your knee going out towards the side that your hand is, and then you can bring it across to the other hand. Bring it just across the center line so you feel a little stretch in the outer hip, and then go back. So one side, the other side. Just a little easeful movement, and if after you've done this a few times, it feels like you want a bit more in that twisting position, you can actually roll over onto that hip and bring the knee further across your body, back then onto your back, and out to the side. And then gradually you'll come back to the center, place that foot on the floor, bend your other knee so that both feet are on the floor. And if you're like me, you feel a little lopsided now, so you may want to lift up your hips and bring them back down in a way that feels aligned with your spine. And then we'll bring the other knee in. You can hold over or behind the knee as we begin here, just relaxing the thigh in towards your chest. And again, you can test if you're really pulling on the leg. You'll know if you let go and the leg springs away from you. You want a nice, easeful position here. Again, it could be behind the knee if your knee doesn't like to be bent fully here. And then again, option here to hold the leg or not as you straighten and bend this leg. So again, inviting some movement into that knee joint. It might creak a little bit, as long as it's not painful. Or again, as I mentioned earlier, there may be a bit of discomfort if there's arthritis in the knees, but you don't want to feel like there's a sharp pain in the knee, in which case I would say, don't do this one or modify. Feel the muscles in the front of your legs starting to engage and work a little more as the muscles in the back stretch and open. Then you can leave the leg there with a little bend in the knee or straight if that's comfortable. And we'll circle your ankle around. You're circling one way and then you can go the other way as well. And then flex your foot so heel presses up. Try to really relax down through the hip into the earth here. Again, your leg does not have to be straight. It can certainly be a little bent. And there's never any strain. So if it's better to hold on or not hold on, you decide what feels right for you. And then point your toes. Again, be gentle here so you don't inadvertently create a cramp in your foot. And then you can flex and point a few times. Now relax your foot, relax your ankle, and give the leg a little shake. Okay, and then bending the knee, bring it back in towards your body. And again, if you like, you can straighten the other leg, but you can certainly leave it bent if that's better for you. If you straighten it out, heel presses down, toes point up. And then again, start with some smaller movements for that hip, circling with one or both hands on the knee. You can gradually make that movement a little bigger as it feels right for you. Go in a circle a few times one way. You can switch directions at some point. And then coming back to the center, we'll do the handoff, knee going out towards the side, into one hand, and then passing it off to the other hand. Just a little across the midline to start with, easing into that little twist. After you've done this a few times, and if it feels like you want more, you're going to take the knee into the opposite hand, roll over, and then roll back. And then let's come back to the center, release that foot to the floor, bend the other knee, and again, you'll probably want to lift and shift your hips back to the center. Now we're going to walk the heels in so that they're more or less underneath your knees, or could be a little further, a little closer, somewhere in that range for bridge pose. Arms down at your sides. So we'll start with dynamic movement, lifting the arms, if that's comfortable for you, as you lift the hips. You can also leave the arms down at the sides or even move them a little away from you if you find that that's a more flowing, easeful kind of position for you. So whatever version works, you can press into the feet. Start to feel the tailbone lift as the lower back flattens, just as we did earlier in the class. Pause there for a breath. And start to lift. Inhaling, maybe taking the arms up as you lift the hips, maybe leaving them on the ground. And then exhaling to lower. Again, follow your own breath rhythm. If you want to move slower than your breath will allow, take 2 breaths, no problem. You can come back to observing the spaces in the breath here to help keep your attention. So as you lift to the apex of the pose, find that little pause, and then as you release back to the ground, find that slight moment of pause. Next time you come down, pause there for a moment. So just stay there And we're going to have the option to come and stay in the pose. Now, if you prefer to keep moving, if that feels better for you, or if you've had enough, then just rest for a moment. And if you want to come into the pose and stay, if that feels right for you, just make sure your feet feel like they're in a comfortable position, about hip distance apart, knees more or less over the ankles. I recommend leaving your arms down for this one, but you can raise them overhead. I just find it a better foundation for the pose with the arms down. So start with a breath in, and then exhale, press into the feet again so you feel the lower back move to the ground, the hips, tailbone starts to lift, and then slowly peeling the spine up off the ground, one vertebra at a time, coming up only as high as feels right for you. So you might just have your hips an inch or two off the ground. You might have them in line with your shoulders and knees. If you have a block or a cushion handy and you want to rest on under your hips, you can certainly do that. And for those who want a little bit more here, and it would feel good to open the chest a bit, you can wiggle from side to side, sort of rocking and wiggling your shoulders underneath you. Palms would either turn up or face each other, and it may be comfortable for you to clasp your hands under you. This is definitely not a requirement, and you don't want to strain the wrists, the elbows, or the shoulders here. So really tune into your joints and make sure if you've tried this position that it feels really good for you. It feels like a nice chest opener. It doesn't put any kind of leverage or strain on your joints. Whenever you feel ready to come down, if you've clasped your hands, you'll release them, wiggle the shoulders apart, and slowly release the spine, just as you came up from the top to the bottom, rolling back down. And then when you get there, let's bring the knees to the chest, and again, we'll move the knees forward and back to give the spine, the muscles that support it, a nice release after our back bend. It's a very mild back bend, actually, bridge. It's actually a forward bend for the neck. And it's mostly kind of straight for the back with a little bit of extension. Okay, let's bring the knees in towards your body and then separate them wide towards the sides of your body. Move them away, together, and back in. So you're making two circles, one with each knee. And then reverse the direction of those circles. Okay, and then when you come back to the center, you're going to place your feet on the ground. Now for the next movement, it would be extremely helpful if you had a pillow or a cushion or a blanket to support your head. We're going to be rolling onto one side, and you want to have something to fill that space between your shoulder and your head. So I'm just going to shift my hips a little to one side so that when I roll, I'm still on my mat. I'm going to roll to one side, and you can do the same. And then I've got my meditation cushion here I'm going to use as a support. So ideally, your head stays in line with your spine. So it could be a folded blanket, it could be a pillow for your bed, anything that helps you to not be, in this position where the head is being tilted to one side and potentially straining the neck. So take your time to move over onto your side and to make sure your head is well supported. And then reach your two hands straight out from your shoulders. One hand on top of the other. So arms straight out, one hand on top of the other. And then you're going to take your top hand, whichever hand that is, you're going to reach it beyond your bottom hand until you feel some space coming in between your shoulder blades. And you can take a moment and breathe into that space. And then we're going to circle that top arm around the head, around the body in fact, by dragging the fingertips on the floor. So if you take your fingertips and start to raise them up towards space over your head, you can bend your arm as it goes over the head if that's more comfortable for your shoulder. You can start to open into a twist as you come to the side. Now this shoulder may not come to the ground, probably won't behind you, that's fine. Just keep circling the arm down by the hip and back to meet the other hand. And then reach out and make that circle. Either bending your arm over your head or you can move it straight if that's comfortable. Circling that arm around. We'll do that a few times. So don't worry about how you're breathing here, just as long as you're breathing and continuing that flow of breath along with the flow of your movement. Checking in with your shoulder, bending the arm as much as you need to make that comfortable. Okay. And as you come to the open position this time, as you're taking the arms away from each other, you can roll back onto your back, and you may need to kind of shift back to the center. I'm going to turn, but you can just roll the other way. I'm going to turn so I'm still facing you guys. And then you're going to roll onto the other side. And of course, we'll repeat that movement. So hands out. And you're going to take the top hand, move it beyond the bottom hand, and then make that circle over your head. Circling around. Be gentle with your shoulder. Bending the elbow is going to really help protect your shoulder from overdoing it here. So any issues with your shoulder, make your circle smaller. Don't go all the way around. Bend the elbow. You honor what you notice in your body. We'll do one more circle on the side. And then when you come back onto your side, take that arm that was circling, bring it to the ground, and you're going to use that hand press against the ground to help you to come upright. We're going to go straight over onto all fours. Coming to table position, knees under the hips, hands under the shoulders. And you can either work with just a cat-cow movement, extending the spine on an inhale and rounding on an exhale, or if you prefer, you can come to child's pose on your exhale. Again, tune into your breath. Maybe observe those little spaces in the wave of your breath. When you come to the top and the bottom of each breath. Follow the flow into stillness and back into flow. Some of you will find downward dog as a pose that feels good for you, and others may not. So if you want to come to downward dog, you can tuck your toes under, lift your hips. If not, stay with this movement that we've just been doing for a few more rounds. Downward dog. Keep the knees bent. Press into the arms. Press into the hands and roll along through your torso. Take a few breaths here. If you like, you can walk your feet in place. And again, if downward dog feels uncomfortable or strained for your wrists or shoulders or anything else, just keep moving on all fours. If you're in downward dog and you haven't come down yet, come on down. Your wrists a little bit of a break, and we'll all come to either child's pose with the hips back on the heels, or a version of puppy, kind of a modified child's pose with the forearms down, or frog pose with the knees apart. So we're going to stay here for a few breaths, so do make sure that you find a comfortable position to be in and come back to your breath. So observing your conscious but relaxed inhale, that little pause at the top of the wave, and then your exhale, little pause at the bottom. Just take a few more breaths in whatever pose you're in, child's pose, frog pose, puppy pose. When you're ready, you can come from that forward position. If it's comfortable, you can come up to sit on your knees. I know that's not good for everybody, so however you want to manage to come to a standing forward bend. So I'm going to come to all fours again, tuck my toes under, and come to a little bit of a squat, and then lift. If you want to come from all fours and step your feet under you and then come to the forward bend, that's also an option. So let your head hang down here for a few breaths, and we'll transition slowly from here. So let's bring the elbows up onto the thighs. Take a few breaths here. And then bring your hands just above your knees onto the thighs. And let's do a little movement here. Again, that cat-cow. So inhaling, arching, exhaling, rounding. When we do this movement standing, we actually get a little bit more stretch in the hamstring. And at some point when you're exhaling, just let the body come all the way upright. So you round and roll up. And we're coming to Tadasana, or called mountain pose in English. Your feet are right under your hips, hip distance apart. Weight slightly, about 60 to 40% weight in your heels versus the balls of your feet, so that you bring your weight back and align your spine. Hips over the heels, shoulders over the hips, head over shoulders. Let's rotate the arms out to palms face out. Let the chest lift a little. Squeeze your shoulder blades back. And then exhale, bring the palms back, around your shoulders, and come forward with the head. Inhale, opening, squeezing back. Exhale, you're internally rotating the shoulders and dropping the chin. A little more like that. Again, after your next exhale, just return back to a neutral spine. We'll take the feet a little apart, and now we'll roll the shoulders, one shoulder and the other shoulder. Again, you're finding your own rhythm, your own flow. Don't worry about your breath, but do keep breathing. And you can reverse the movement as well. And eventually coming back to the center, hands to your hips. And we can soften the knees and do a few circles here. Getting into those hip joints in a little bit of a different way than when you're lying down. And after a few times one way, go ahead and go in circles the other way. Okay, come back to the center. Let's bring the feet in again so they're under the hips. And we'll work a little bit with the hip joint again, but also adding in a bit of balance here. So you can come to the toes of one foot and let the other foot really settle and take your weight. And then you can do this two ways. One is, I'll show you the easier way first, which is to leave the toes on the ground, rotate the knee to the side, and come back. And then you'll do the same thing on the other side, rotate, and come back. If you want to make it a little more challenging, you'll lift the leg, rotate it, and bring it down. And then you'll switch. So either toes on the ground or lifting. Either way, you're working with balance. This one is a little more challenging than the other. You also want to really tune in and make sure that it's a movement that feels good for your hips. Great, make this the last circle. If you remember which side you started on, you can finish on the other side, so that might be one more. And then we'll come back to mountain posture. Then we'll move into warrior one. So, and that'll open up the front of the hips a little bit. So if you step toward the back of your mat, if you're on a mat, or toward the back of your space, and you'll take a step forward. Doesn't matter which foot. You'll turn the other foot out so that your whole foot is on the ground. And you want to try to bring your hips back to face the foot that's in front. Bending the front knee, press into the back heel, inhale and lift your arms. So we're going to flow with this movement. Exhale, either bring your hands just to your knee or shin or ground or blocks if you have them. You could also use a chair. We're inhaling to lift and exhaling to come forward. If it feels right for you, and we have done a few hamstring stretches already, you could move your front leg straighter or straight as you come forward to invite a bit more length and ease into those hamstrings. Make this your last one. You'll come up and release. So a little challenge for you here. You step forward. See if you can step back without having to swing your arms or get a lot of momentum. If we step too far forward, we have to kind of flick ourselves back. So a little challenge there. We'll try the other side. So nice big step forward. Just whatever distance feels right for you. The wider your feet are, the more challenging it is to do the pose, but also more challenging to step back out of it later. So hips pointing towards the front of your mat or towards the front foot. Back foot is turned out. We're going to bend the front knee. Inhale, lift the arms. And then exhale, any version of the forward bend that feels right for you. The front leg can stay bent or you can move straighter. Make this the last one. And back up. And release. So again, see if you can step back. Minimum amount of flinging around and movement. And let's come into some forward bending now. Inhale and lifting. You can bend both your knees as you come forward, hands to the knees, shins, or towards the ground. Let your head release. And we'll repeat that a few times, bringing everything back to alignment after warrior. If it feels good for you, stay a few breaths in that forward bend. Try to let your head release. Elbows can be on the thighs for a more supported forward bend, or any version that feels good to you. When you're ready, come up with the breath in. And we will release. Pausing again in mountain pose for a moment. You might notice the feeling of flow in your body. Sometimes once we start moving a little bit, you might feel some tingling, or you might even feel your heart rate is raised up a bit just for moving our bodies. And that promotes circulation. Again, flow in the body. So there's all kinds of different systems of flow in the body, actually. And our circulation is just one of them. Let's take the feet wide again. And we'll move into a side bend. So we want to keep the knees soft so we're not locking. When we lock the knees, you tend to kind of collapse the whole back and the hips. So a little softness in the knees. We'll take one arm up, breathing in. And then exhale, reaching up and over to the side. As you inhale, you'll come to the center and switch your arm. And then exhale, go to the other side. So inhale into center and switching. And then exhaling to reach up and over. If you like, you can stay a few breaths. If it feels better to keep moving, by all means, keep moving. We're not trying to go as far as you can, but nice, relaxed. Reaching up and then reversing. And over to the other side. Reaching up, this arm be nice and relaxed. And back, and we'll let that arm come down as well as the other. Soften the knees even more. We're going to roll the shoulders back as we kind of lean into it and lift. You can get the whole arms into it. And coming back down, bring the feet in, and everything is shaped. Just be a rag doll. Let it go. And then coming back to stillness. So this shaking, sort of like when the wind is on the water and it's all crazy, and then back to that calm, still pool. Pausing in mountain pose and noticing the effects of the movement, flow in the body, flow of the breath. More breaths here. So when you're ready, we're going to make our way down to the ground. We'll very shortly be moving into Shavasana. So you can make your way down and do just a little bit of movement on our backs, and then we'll move into our Shavasana from there. So take your time coming down, back onto your back where we started. The hands in the belly, feet bent, knees bent, feet on the floor, feet are not bent. Taking a breath in and exhaling. Feel your lower back relax and settle on the ground again. Take a moment here to observe the spaces between your breaths. And let's bring the knees up into the chest. Do one more movement here. So let me give you an option. You can either do this forward and back motion with the legs to release the lower back a little bit, or if you like, so we've done lots of warm-ups for the back of the legs, you could extend the legs toward the ceiling, arms either to your sides or straight back behind you, and then knees to your chest. So your exhale means you squeeze in. Inhaling as you move the legs away, whether that's knees bent, hands on the knees, or this more open, extended position. And then bringing the knees back to the chest. If there's any other movement that would feel good, circling or rocking or just squeezing the knees. A few more rounds of what we already did. So whatever might feel good and help you to feel like you're able to really release and relax in Shavasana. And then when you feel complete with that, you can release your feet to the floor and find the position that's going to work best for you. So if that means supporting your head, having a bolster under your knees, maybe not being on the floor, maybe since you're all at home, maybe you're more comfortable on a couch or on a bed for relaxation. So just go ahead and get comfortable, cover up if you need to, add more clothing if you're chilly. It's very difficult to relax when you're cold. And just after getting the blood flowing in the body and circulation going a bit more, then when we settle and everything slows down, feel the coolness a bit more. So as you find your way to Shavasana, start out by coming back to the breath. Back to this idea of a nice relaxed, conscious inhale. There's a pause at the crest of the wave, and then exhale takes you down. There's a pause in the valley of the wave. These pauses are just microseconds. Let's see if you can tune in and notice. There's stillness in the flow, and there's flow in the stillness. Tune into that reality with your breath. And then as you exhale, start to feel your neck release and the weight of your head sink down. Feel the muscles of your face and jaw relax. If your mind wanders, you can always come back to the breath or simply listening to the instructions and really trying to follow, keeping your attention. Feel the throat soften, the shoulders drop, the arms release from the shoulders to the elbows to the wrists, and the wrists to the tips of your fingertips. Exhale, let your arms be heavier. Feel the weight of your rib cage as you exhale and feel the ribs settle back into the earth. Allow your abdomen to soften and see if you can find a little more ease in your lower back. Letting go of any tension or holding that you're aware of that you can release. Sometimes we're aware of holding patterns in the body, but they're so established that we can't release on our own. We need a massage or a good stretch. So if you find tight areas in your body and they don't want to let go just because you say so, just move on. Recognize that this can be a process. Let the weight of your hips and pelvis sink down. Relax the muscles of your buttocks, pelvic floor, front of your hips. And then relaxing from the hips to the knees. Soften from the knees to the ankles. Let go your feet. Your feet soften and relax. With each exhalation, feel a little more release as possible. I'll share with you a small section of a chant that honors water as the primary creative force in the world. Yo pam pushpam veda pushpavan prajavan pashuman bhavati Chandramava apam pushpam pushpavan prajavan pashuman bhavati. Ya evam veda yo pamayatanam veda ayatanavam bhavati agnirva apamayatanam ayatanavam bhavati Yogner ayatanam veda ayatanavam bhavati apova agner ayatanavam bhavati ya evam veda. So tuning again to the rhythm and flow of your breath, start to deepen the breath and invite a little more energy, a little more flow. Right, when we relax, the breath gets very subtle and we become like that calm pool of water. And then when we want to wake up, it's like we agitate a little by deepening the breath, finding some movement, wiggle your fingers and toes, bring that flow back into your body from the extremities. Maybe circle the ankles and the wrists or stretch the arms and legs out. It's whatever would feel good. And when you're ready, you can roll onto your side, take your time and pause there for a moment. And then eventually you're going to make your way back to a seated position. And once you arrive, bringing the palms together and taking a moment to just notice the flow of your breath. And know that even when we feel stuck in life, when we feel backed into a corner, when we feel locked down in some way, physically or mentally, that we can reignite our feeling of flow by tuning into our breath, by focusing on what is flowing and working in our lives, and to work to further what's flowing and let go of what's not flowing for us. Namaste.